Screams echoed through the cosmic night. Entire planets burned for daring to disobey the Galactic Empire. Entire species exterminated, examples to the rest of the galaxy. No one dared disobey, except the humans. Ultar's slime glistened in the red sunlight as he stepped off the transport. First day on the job at Empire HQ. Skyscrapers towered overhead, swarming with aliens enforcing galactic rule. His supervisor Krelox sneered, "Any disloyalty must be crushed." Humanity's survival depended on Ultar, their spy. One wrong move and billions would burn. Ultar's tentacles twitched as he scanned through the data packets flooding his terminal. Most of it was the usual dull, busy work, resource acquisition logs, star maps, and personnel reports. But then a transmission from the Imperial scout ship Zinthar caught his eye. The file was tagged as a new species discovery, always an exciting prospect. The report introduced a bipedal organic race called humans, unremarkable in most aspects. Ultar skimmed the summary of their physical attributes and social structure, which painted them as a fragmented civilization still confined to their singular planet. He was about to move on when a video log from the Zinthar survey grabbed his attention. The clip showed an aerial view of two human settlements, crude metal structures sprawling across a barren landscape. Suddenly, thunderous booms erupted from both sides as the settlements launched explosive projectiles at each other. Towers crumbled, fires raged, and Ultar watched in awe as thousands of humans charged from their bases, brandishing handheld slug throwers. They crashed together in a chaotic melee, the scouts' visual feed capturing every moment of the slaughter in grisly detail. "By the stars," Ultar muttered. "They're fighting their own kind, and with such enthusiasm." He rewound the clip, analyzing the humans' combat strategies and weapons tech. For a species that hadn't even achieved interstellar flight, their military hardware was impressive. Armored land vehicles, flying gunships, even chemical weapons that left scores of mangled bodies in their wake. This war was more than a minor skirmish. It was a dedicated conflict between human nations, waged with all the deadly innovations they could muster. Ultar pulled up the Zinthar's full report and eagerly devoured every word. He learned that this was no isolated incident. Humanity's history was defined by an endless cycle of wars. Century after century, humans had slaughtered each other by the millions over resources, territory, even abstract concepts like ideology and religion. No other known species engaged in such large-scale intra-species violence. And yet somehow they had survived, even thrived, through these self-inflicted calamities. Humans were also masters of adaptation, engineering marvels that allowed them to inhabit every corner of their planet, from icy poles to searing deserts, lush jungles to abyssal trenches. These tenacious creatures always found a way to bend the environment to their will. Ultar felt a chill as a realization took hold. If humans ever turned this tenacity and warlike ingenuity towards the stars, they could grow into a formidable power, perhaps even a threat to the Empire itself, if left unchecked. His heart began to race at the prospect. He needed to learn everything he could about this fascinating, terrifying species. Ultar's tentacles tapped furiously at his terminal, compiling his findings on the humans into a concise report. The more he learned about this volatile species, the greater his unease grew. He had to warn his superiors about the potential danger they posed. With a determined stride, Ultar made his way to Krelock's office. Datapad clutched tightly in his appendages. He found his supervisor lounging in his chair, idly scrolling through reports. "Sir, I need to discuss an urgent matter with you," Ultar began, his voice quivering slightly. Krelock looked up, annoyance flashing across his scaly features. "What is it, Ultar? I'm busy." "It's about the humans, sir. I believe they could become a significant threat to the Empire if we don't take action soon." Krelock scoffed, leaning back in his seat. "The humans? Those primitive apes from the Zinthar report? Don't be ridiculous." Ultar shook his head, holding out the datapad. "I've been monitoring their activity closely. Their conflicts are escalating at an alarming rate, and their weapons technology is advancing rapidly. They're even starting to explore space." Krelock snatched the datapad, skimming through the report with a dismissive snort. "So what? They're still centuries away from achieving interstellar travel. By the time they reach the stars, our technology will have advanced so far beyond theirs that they won't stand a chance. But, sir, Altar pressed, their rate of progress is unprecedented. If they continue at this pace, they could catch up to us far sooner than we anticipate. Krelok tossed the datapad onto his desk, fixing Altar with a condescending glare. Listen, Altar. The Empire has the most advanced military in the galaxy. We have weapons that can vaporize entire planets. Do you really think a bunch of hairless apes with chemical rockets and slug throwers pose any kind of threat to us? Altar's tentacles curled in frustration, but he kept his tone even. I understand your confidence, sir, but I believe it would be wise to take proactive measures, perhaps send a fleet to monitor their system more closely. Krelok waved a dismissive hand. Absolutely not. I won't waste valuable resources on your paranoid delusions. The humans are beneath our notice. End of discussion. With that, Krelok turned back to his own terminal, pointedly ignoring Altar's presence. Altar stood there for a moment, his heart sinking with the weight of his unheeded warning. Finally, he turned and shuffled out of the office, his mind racing with grim possibilities. As the months passed, Altar continued his surveillance of the humans, growing more troubled with each new development. The wars on Earth were becoming more frequent and destructive, with entire cities reduced to rubble by advanced explosives and energy weapons. The humans seemed to have an insatiable appetite for conflict, always finding new reasons to slaughter each other en masse. But it was their burgeoning space program that truly set Altar's nerves on edge. At first, it was just primitive satellites and unmanned probes, tentatively exploring their own solar system. But then came the manned missions, the establishment of orbital habitats, the first steps towards true interplanetary travel. The humans were learning, adapting, and advancing at a rate that defied all Imperial projections. Altar pored over the latest intelligence reports, his heart hammering with a sickening realization. The humans were progressing far more rapidly than anyone in the Empire had anticipated. If they maintained this pace, they could achieve interstellar capability within mere decades rather than centuries. He tried to warn his superiors again and again, but each time he was met with the same dismissive attitude. The Empire was too arrogant, too secure in its own superiority to take the threat seriously. But Altar knew better. He had seen the depths of human ingenuity and destructive potential firsthand. As he stared at the flickering images of human warships blasting each other apart in the cold void of space, Altar felt a chill settle deep in his core. The Empire had gravely underestimated these creatures, and if they didn't act soon, the consequences could be catastrophic. Altar paced back and forth in the Grand Council chamber, his tentacles twitching with nervous energy. The High Council members lounged in their hovering seats, regarding him with a mix of boredom and disdain. He clutched his datapad tightly, the screen filled with meticulously compiled reports on human activity. Esteemed council members, Altar began, his voice echoing in the cavernous room, I come before you today with a matter of utmost urgency. The humans, a newly discovered species, pose a significant threat to the Empire's dominance. A ripple of murmurs and scoffs swept through the council. A bulbous, gelatinous creature spoke up, its voice gurgling with contempt. The humans? Those primitive apes? Surely you jest, Altar. Altar shook his head, his resolve unwavering. I assure you, Councillor Xyloth, this is no laughing matter. I have been monitoring human activity closely, and their rate of advancement is alarming. Their wars are becoming more destructive, their weapons more sophisticated. They have even begun to explore space. So what? A spindly, insectoid councillor interjected. They are still centuries behind our technology. They pose no real challenge to the Empire. Altar tapped frantically on his datapad, bringing up holographic projections of human warships engaging in fierce battles. Explosions bloomed in the void, and debris scattered across the stars. Do these look like the actions of a primitive species, Councillor Zarvin? Altar challenged. The humans are progressing at an unprecedented rate. If we do not act soon, they could become a formidable adversary. The council chamber erupted into a cacophony of arguing voices. Some dismissed Oltar's concerns as baseless paranoia, while others demanded to see more evidence. Oltar stood his ground, patiently addressing each question and counter-argument with a wealth of data from his reports. As the debate dragged on, a few council members began to shift in their seats, their expressions growing troubled. A reptilian councillor, Zaxor, spoke up, his forked tongue flicking thoughtfully. "Oltar raises valid points," Zaxor admitted. "Perhaps it would be prudent to investigate this matter further. We cannot afford to underestimate any potential threat to the Empire." Slowly, grudgingly, other council members began to nod in agreement. Oltar felt a flicker of hope in his heart as he saw the tide turning in his favor. Finally, the council's leader, a towering, crystalline being, raised a translucent hand for silence. "Enough. We have heard Oltar's arguments, and while I remain skeptical of the true extent of the human threat, it is clear that this matter warrants further investigation." The leader fixed Oltar with a piercing, multifaceted gaze. "Oltar, you have convinced us to take action. The Council hereby authorizes the dispatch of a fleet of warships to the human system. They will assess the situation and, if necessary, subjugate the humans to ensure their compliance with Imperial rule." Oltar bowed deeply, his tentacles quivering with a mix of relief and trepidation. "Thank you, High Counselor. I assure you this decision will prove to be a wise one." As the council members dispersed, Oltar clutched his datapad tightly to his chest, his mind racing with the implications of what had just transpired. The Empire had finally acknowledged the human threat, but would it be enough? And what would happen when the humans inevitably resisted subjugation? Oltar shook his head, pushing those thoughts aside. For now he had done his duty. The wheels of the Empire's mighty war machine were turning, and the humans' fate would soon be decided, one way or another. Oltar's tentacles curled with a mix of anticipation and dread as he watched the Imperial fleet emerge from hyperspace above the blue-green orb of Earth. The mighty warships, each one bristling with advanced weaponry, took up formation in the planet's orbit. Oltar had spent months warning of the human threat, and now the Empire would finally see the truth of his words. But as the first Imperial cruiser began its descent towards the planet's surface, a swarm of human spacecraft suddenly appeared on the fleet's sensors. They were small, agile craft, darting through the void with surprising speed and maneuverability. And they were armed. Oltar's eyes widened as he watched the human ships open fire, their weapons cutting through the Imperial shields, like plasma through flesh. Explosions bloomed across the hulls of the Empire's warships, and debris spun off into the void. The Imperial fleet, caught completely off guard by the humans' advanced technology, struggled to mount an effective defense. "How is this possible?" Oltar muttered, his gaze fixed on the holographic display before him. "Our intelligence indicated that the humans were still decades away from achieving this level of space travel capability." But there was no denying the evidence before his eyes. The humans had been concealing their true technological prowess, biding their time and preparing for this very moment. And now they were unleashing the full might of their arsenal upon the unsuspecting Imperial forces. As the battle raged on, Oltar couldn't help but feel a grudging admiration for the humans' tactics. They were employing unconventional strategies, using their smaller ships to outmaneuver the lumbering Imperial cruisers and target their weak points with surgical precision. The Empire's commanders, used to fighting by the rigid doctrines of their military training, seemed unable to adapt to the humans' fluid, unpredictable style of warfare. Hours passed, and the Imperial fleet found itself being pushed back, its numbers dwindling with each passing moment. Finally, with a heavy heart, the fleet commander gave the order to retreat. The remaining Imperial ships limped away from Earth's orbit, their hulls scarred and their pride shattered. In the aftermath of the battle, the council chamber was in an uproar. Holographic displays showed the extent of the Empire's losses, and the councillors' faces were etched with a mix of shock, anger, and fear. Oltar, standing before them once again, felt a grim sense of vindication. "I see now the truth of my warnings," he said, his voice cutting through the clamor. "The humans are not the primitive savages we once believed them to be. They are a force to be reckoned with, and if we do not act soon, they could bring the Empire to its knees." The councillors, chastened by the humiliating defeat, began to nod in agreement. Plans were made, strategies were debated, and resources were allocated. The Empire would not underestimate the human threat again. As the council session drew to a close, the High Councillor fixed Ulta with a piercing gaze. "Ulta, you have proven yourself to be a valuable asset to the Empire. Your foresight and strategic acumen will be essential in the coming conflict. I hereby appoint you as a key strategist in our efforts to counter the human menace." Ulta bowed deeply, his tentacles quivering with a mix of pride and determination. "I am honored, High Councillor. I will not fail you or the Empire." As he left the council chamber, Ulta's mind raced with the implications of what had transpired. The Empire and the humans were now locked in a deadly struggle for galactic supremacy, and the fate of countless species hung in the balance. It would be a war unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, and Ulta knew that he would be at the center of it all. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.